The 5th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now. This is Carolina basketball.
Black holding high, goes to Daugherty. Daugherty in the double team, gives it back to Black with 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan, jumper from out on the left, good! Michigan out of timeout. And Weber, front court, Carolina thought he'd travel with it. Weber, front court, Carolina with foul. He takes a timeout, they're out of timeout. Technical foul on Michigan.
Now gets it away to Donald Williams. Down the side to Stackhouse. Stackhouse streaking in on Park. Reverse dunk is good, and he gets fouled by Park. Oh, my goodness, what a dunk. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out to hit. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. May! It's over! Carolina has won the national championship. Belton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. 89-72. And how about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
Matthews off the mark. And this year the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time.
From HeelToughBlog.com, this is the Four Corners podcast, featuring your host, Josh Marlowe. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. It's been about a week or so since me and Anthony both talked to you, and in that time period, a lot has happened for Carolina, both on and off the court, as we are fully immersed into what's been a very hectic, very busy, very historic offseason. And, buddy, we'll go ahead and dive right in. And one of the big things that's been bothering Carolina fans up until we got announced last week was the fact that, Hubert Davis has been the head coach for a week and a half or so and didn't finalize his coaching staff. And last week he finally took the final steps, and he's put together the staff that is tasked with getting Carolina basketball back to the top of the ACC and back to one of the best programs in the country. As we kind of knew, and one piece of news that we already knew had been reported by himself, and then another piece of we knew was going to happen. Both Kendall Marshall and Steve Robinson not retained on the staff for Hubert Davis, he's kind of shortened his staff as opposed to what Roy Williams had. Not as many on the bench positions, not that many people involved with basketball operations as under Roy. And I think the bigger loss to this is Steve Robinson. This guy is a guy that deserves to be in the Assistant Coaches Hall of Fame. Was a big part of Carolina winning 3 national championships. Was Roy Williams' right-hand man. And I do think he would have benefited more to Hubert Davis than maybe Roy Williams in years past, because he has some experience. He understands how to get through an ACC season, how to get a team ready to compete and make a run at a national championship. And for Kendall Marshall, this is a guy who's, getting into the coaching side of things because his NBA career, while he had one, wasn't very lengthy. And it didn't spend a lot of time in Pro Bowl as expected. And those two guys won't be back, but we do want to thank those guys for everything they did for Carolina basketball, because a lot of their success happened because of those two. So the guys that he did hold over, Sean May and Brad Frederick. Sean May being elevated from Director of Basketball Ops to a position on the bench staff. The idea is that he will probably be Hubert Davis's lead recruiter out of the lead assistant, or out of his assistant coaches, and Brad Frederick, a guy who has worked his way up from basketball ops to on the staff, like Sean May has. He's been tasked with coaching the JV squad the last couple years. Those two guys are retaining the two guys he hired. He made it known in his presser, to coach here, you had to be a Carolina guy, you had to play here, and the two guys he hired did that. Jeff Lebo and Jackie Emmanuel Lebo was a teammate of Hubert Davis's back in the 80s, has had an extensive coaching career in Division I college basketball, although never led any of the programs to the NCAA tournament. Jackie Emmanuel, a guy that's had a couple stops, has been with CB McGrath down at UNCW, joined the women's program as a director of player development back in 2020. He's moving offices about a mile down the road from the women's side of things over to the men, and he's joining Hubert Davis's staff. Other notes, he kept Jonas Saracen and Doug Halverson on. Saracen is the strength and conditioning coach, and Halverson is the lead athletic trainer. Both guys highly regarded as the best at what they do, not just in the ACC, but all in college athletics. So just overall, your reaction to a staff. You got to remember, we swung and missed on King Rice, but he wanted Carolina guys, and Hubert Davis got Carolina guys.
Yeah, I mean, King Rice, I think, is definitely one that a lot of people wanted, so it definitely hurts that they don't end up getting him. But I think at the same time, when you look at that was kind of a little bit of a pipe dream anyways, because, you know, you were trying to convince a guy to leave a current head coaching job to come be an assistant at Carolina. Now, I mean, look, he probably would have been the lead assistant, so I think that was something that needed to be considered. But he definitely, you know, you got to respect him. He took his time. He considered the fact that, you know, that he would be able to come back to Carolina, would be under Hubert Davis. So, you know, I mean, a guy who I think he definitely respects. You can tell just from him, you know, taking the call and even thinking on it for a while. But ultimately he stays at Monmouth, and I don't think anybody can really blame him. You know, then, you know, there were some other names that were thrown out. I mean, look, I don't think is it a world-beating staff? No. I mean, look, you knew that the staff was probably not going to be as good as it was under Roy Williams. I mean, Steve Robinson leaving, that one hurts. You do have a former coach that is going to be on the bench in Jeff Lebo, but let's be honest, I mean, their careers are somewhat comparable, and to be honest with you, in terms of head coaching, and to be honest with you, Steve Robinson actually had even a little more success than Jeff Lebo did in terms of making the NCAA tournament at his stops as a head coach. So I think that's the good part, though, is that you do have a guy that is going to be on your bench that is experienced in Jeff Lebo. You know, you've got Brad Frederick coming back that's going to be able to sort of hold over some of the things from the previous staff. Same thing with Sean May, because, look, he wasn't, I guess technically he didn't have a bench role. He pretty much had a bench role these last couple of years. So I think, you know, those three parts are huge. And then, I mean, you get Jack Emanuel, and look, I think that a lot of people are kind of wondering, well, how big of a get actually is that? The women's program has taken some significant steps over the last couple of years under their new head coach, Courtney Banghart. So I definitely think that there could have been worse guys that you could have added to the staff. I don't think it's the greatest staff that people were hoping for. There were a few other options out there. I know Derek Phelps at Washington State is an assistant that some people were looking at.
George Lynch, Jeff McInnes.
Right, but with George Lynch, that's another guy that currently has is he coaching anywhere right now? Or if he is, it's an AAU team, I believe.
No,
right?
George Lynch coaches at an HBCU in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Oh, my bad about that. I didn't even know that. Oh, wow. And he does the podcast with Matt Doherty? Woo! Coach Lynch putting in work. But Jeff McGinnis, that's another guy. I mean, look, Jeff McGinnis has done good things at Combine Academy, never been a college assistant, so it would have been a step up for him. Same thing with a lot of the other guys. I know Shaman Williams, I believe he's an AAU coach on the circuit, maybe a high school coach as well. So that was the thing. I mean, you were going to probably be looking at some guys that didn't have a ton of experience. Jack Emanuel does have some experience. Now, it's not on the men's side of things, but still being around college basketball, he knows what it's going to be like to have to go out and recruit, stuff like that. So he'll be able to help you out in some of those respects as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a decent staff. The other thing that you look at with this is over the last couple of years, Roy Williams very rarely went out on the recruiting trail unless he had to. Hubert Davis is going to take a much different approach. He will be hands-on, helping his staff on the recruiting trail.
He doesn't have a choice.
Because he's 50. First of all, he's 50-something years old. Most of the guys that are in the next few recruiting classes, he is the guy that was their primary recruiter before he was elevated to head coach. So he's still going to be the guy that's going to go and try to recruit them. So it'll be a different strategy. Not saying that Roy's strategy didn't work. Roy was getting older, clearly. I mean, you knew once he got into his late 60s, you weren't going to see him on the road as much. And especially with the fact that, you know, we knew it. We knew that he had, you know, some issues with the vertigo and everything like that. So, of course, you weren't going to see him out on the recruiting trail as much. With Hubert, it'll be a little bit different. That's why you probably don't have to have some of the ace recruiters on the staff, because you're there. You have guys that are there more to kind of develop the players a little bit. So, I mean, we'll see. I think that it's kind of what he was looking for, but at the same time, I mean, look, he would probably tell you right out, yeah, we wish that we could have had King Rice on the staff for sure. There may have been another guy or two that they targeted and talked to that maybe just said, look, thanks for the offer, but no thanks. But at the same time, I still think there are people saying this is one of the worst staffs Carolina has ever had. Let's relax here. It's really not that bad.
Well, I think the thing that it does more than anything is if this team's going to be good, and by good I mean competing to win an ACC title, the coaches are going to be coaching. The sense is that since Kobe White's crew left in 2019, the last 2 years, the perception around the program is that Carolina's not developing players like they're supposed to.
Well, you want to recruit one and done, so I mean, there's not much time to develop them. They're going out after a year, so.
Well, and you know, if there's one person I could have added to this staff, is the guy I've been saying since he left was the biggest loss, and that was C.B. McGrath.
Yeah, that one kind of shocked me that he wasn't, because he's not removed or leaving his role that he had this past year, right? As far as we know, he's still involved with the program, so we definitely thought he would be a guy that would be on that bench. I'm with you. That one's a little bit shocking to me.
So, and I mean, look, we've seen Sean May grow under Roy Williams. Brad Frederick, I mean, his role has grown under Roy Williams as well. And I mean, Jeff Lebo, you don't coach for 20-something years if you can't coach, but you never got a team to an NCAA tournament. Now, granted, where he was at, Auburn and East Carolina, you don't win there unless, frankly, you're cheating, a la Bruce Pearl. So, I mean, it's understandable he never got to the NCAA tournament. And Jackie Emanuel, that's a guy that, we're not going to complain about the staff if they're winning. But if the program doesn't win, this will be the thing that they harp on the most, is that, well, he didn't put together a great staff. So I think that's the issue where he's running into, is that he didn't get a great staff in a lot of people's minds. Well, you got Carolina guys, and that's what he said he wanted.
Right.
So if you win, no one's going to give a crap.
And he's got 3 relatively young guys on his staff. I don't know how old Brad Frederick is. He's probably, early 40s?
Yeah, he's not that old.
Sean May and Jackie Emanuel both in their 30s. So you have to take risks on these guys. What are you going to do? Hire a bunch of old heads for the rest of your life? That ain't going to work. You won't have anybody to lean on afterwards. You got to take some risks on these guys. So far, with everything that we've seen, I don't know about anybody else. I didn't get the backlash that Sean May got when they said they were elevating him to a bench role. I don't know how involved he's been, but I'm assuming that he has been helping coach the big men along with Brad Frederick. And it seems like from what we've seen, he's done everything he needs to. He wouldn't be on the staff if he didn't do everything that he needed to do to put himself in a position to get a bench role. And then with Jackie Emanuel, I mean, look, this is a guy that's been, like we said, he's been around college basketball. Now, granted, it's on the women's side of things, so it's probably a little bit of a different landscape coming over to the men's side of things, but this dude's at least been involved, and he's going to know what to do. You also said he did coach under C.B. McGrath with the men's program at UNCW. So again, this guy has been places before. That's my thing about it. These are the same people that were telling us that they wanted Vince Carter and Rasheed Wallace to be on the bench, right?
Yeah.
No coaching experience from what we know. But you hire Jackie Emanuel and Sean May, and you're complaining about the fact that the staff has guys that don't have enough experience. What in the absolute hell do these people want? I just don't understand it.
Well, it's like I said.
It's not that bad, people.
If they win, they're not gonna care that he didn't bring in some big name staff. But if they don't win, this will be the thing they get at. And as I put in the article, getting the assistant coaches was a big thing. I think keeping your strength and conditioning coach and your head athletic trainer are more important, or just as important as head coaches. Jonas Saracen is probably the best strength and conditioning coach in college athletics.
Well, especially if you're going to want to keep this team running up and down the floor like Roy liked to. And that you want to bring that back into which you would think with the more athletic forwards that you're looking at, he's going to be a big part of getting this done. And then with Doug Halverson, I mean, look at the last few years here. you've gotten banged up every single year, so you got to have somebody that can try to nurse these guys back pretty quick.
Yeah, and you speaking of stretch or athletic fours, Carolina got one over the weekend. Brady Manick. We didn't talk about him being a potential target for Carolina on the podcast.
He kind of